defenders, and they're going to want to do their best to create some turnovers here. Clark, quickly, you can count it!
Something happened in Connecticut last night that the Indiana Fever desperately wish nobody saw. And by the time you hear every detail, you will completely understand why thousands of fans are flooding social media with the same demand right now. Brittney Griner should not be allowed anywhere near that court again. But here is what makes this situation so much deeper than one reckless play. Because what unfolded after Griner went after Caitlin Clark is the moment that flipped this entire story upside down, and it involves a name that the Indiana Fever spent the entire week trying to bury. Sophie Cunningham. Stay right here, because this story has 3 layers to it: the hit, the silence, and the revenge, and every single one of them will leave you completely speechless. This is what really happened.
Clark launches and answers with a 3.
So this was the Brittney Griner play in the 4th. Watch Brittney Griner bulldoze Caitlin Clark. She completely bulldozes Caitlin Clark in the 4th quarter. Stephanie White hate Caitlin Clark with the passion. I am convinced she definitely hates Caitlin Clark with a passion. Watch this, guys. Watch this. Ridiculous. Why come this wasn't a foul? This was another, should have been a foul, bro. She damn near should have got ejected, bro. She damn near should have got ejected for this. Just ridiculous, bro. It's ridiculous what they be going through. And this was a moving screen. And it was a moving screen. Look. She's walking and shit. This is a moving screen. Caitlin Clark cannot win for losing, bro. Cannot win for losing in this league.
Before we even get into what Brittney Griner did to Caitlin Clark on that court, you need to understand what was brewing behind the scenes before this game even tipped off. Because the Indiana Fever did not walk into Connecticut with a clean slate. They walked in carrying a storm that had been building all week long. Caitlin Clark was listed as probable with a lingering back injury. The same back issue that had already raised eyebrows earlier in the season when the league actually issued a warning to the Fever for improperly reporting her status. And then there was Sophie Cunningham, listed as probable with a right elbow injury that appeared out of thin air roughly 24 hours after she made the pass that everyone is still talking about. Rewind to June 8th. Indiana versus the Mystics. Final seconds. Play drawn up by Stephanie White. And Sophie Cunningham, instead of following whatever the original design was, fires the ball to Caitlin Clark. Clark buries the game winner. Crowd goes insane. But immediately after that play, something strange started happening. Fans across every platform started speculating that the play was never meant to go to Clark. Then Sophie appeared to confirm it in an Instagram post that sent the internet into a frenzy. She had to go on her own podcast just to clean up the mess. She claimed on air that the play was designed for Clark the whole time and that there was a miscommunication on a cross screen that left Clark wide open. She said the play was perfectly executed. But here is the problem. A whole lot of people did not buy that explanation, and Sophie knew it. Then, for the first time all season, Sophie Cunningham appeared on the injury report. Right elbow. She practiced normally the day before. She was tagged as questionable. Then she was ruled out for the Chicago game entirely. Fans immediately connected the dots. This was not an injury. This looked and felt like a punishment. The Fever still won that game against the Sky without her, taking it in overtime 114-106. But the questions did not stop. If anything, they got louder. And Sophie showed up to Connecticut listed as probable, with every single eye in the building watching to see if she would actually play. Because at that point, the elbow was not the story anymore. The story was whether the Indiana Fever were sending a message to the one teammate who had the nerve to make sure Caitlin Clark got the ball when it mattered most.
Oh, looked at the rim, gets it right back to Clark, to the cup.
Why come this wasn't a foul? This was another, should have been a foul, bro. She damn near should have got ejected, bro. She damn near should have got ejected for this. just ridiculous, bro. It's ridiculous what they be going through. And this was a moving screen. And it was a moving screen. Look. She's walking and shit. This is a moving screen.
Now let us talk about what was waiting for Indiana on the other side of that court. Because the Connecticut Sun had a weapon that had been sitting on the shelf for weeks. Brittney Griner, signed to a massive 7-figure deal in the offseason to be exactly what Connecticut needed. A physical force in the paint, a tone setter, a player who changes the way opponents think twice before driving to the basket. But Griner had barely been available. She had only appeared in 6 of Connecticut's 14 games this season. A left foot issue kept her out early, then a rib strain sidelined her for another stretch. She missed the last 2 games before this one, so when she was cleared to play against Indiana, she was not just coming back. She was coming back rested, coming back hungry, and coming back with something to prove to a team that had been surviving without her. And from the opening minutes, you could feel the difference her presence made. The Sun were more physical. The paint was more crowded. Every drive to the basket had an extra layer of resistance. Griner finished the game with 10 points, 2 rebounds, and 2 blocks. Solid numbers on paper, but the stat sheet does not tell you what really happened in that fourth quarter.
Clark, step back 3. That one will go, and she's knocked down a pair.
With a hand in her face.
Because there is a difference between playing physical basketball and doing what Brittney Griner did to Caitlin Clark. And what she did crossed a line that the referees should have never ignored. Fourth quarter, Indiana building a lead. Clark doing exactly what Clark does, running the offense, knocking down shots, keeping the Fever in control of a road game that could have gone sideways at any moment. And then it happened. Brittney Griner set a screen on Caitlin Clark that was not a screen at all. It was a bulldoze, a full-body collision that sent Clark flying, not incidental contact, not a basketball play, a moving screen so blatant that anyone watching at home could see it in real time without needing a replay. Griner was walking into Clark as the contact happened. Her feet were not set, her body was moving forward, and the force of the hit knocked Clark straight to the floor. Now here is where it gets truly unbelievable. The referees saw it. They were right there. And they did absolutely nothing. No whistle, no flagrant foul, no review on the monitor, no ejection, nothing. Clark got up because Clark always gets up. She has taken more hits this season than almost any player in the league, and every single time she picks herself up and keeps playing. But the fact that she is tough enough to absorb it does not make it acceptable that the officials continue to allow it. This was not a borderline call. This was not a play where you could argue the refs had a bad angle. This was a clear moving screen with excessive force that in any other situation on any other player would have been an automatic ejection. And the referees swallowed their whistles like it never happened. But the no call was only half the scandal. Because what happened on the Indiana Fever sideline in the seconds after that hit is what truly set the basketball world on fire.
Sophie Cunningham ain't look like that elbow was hurt. It ain't look like that elbow was hurt. I ain't gonna lie to you. Sophie Cunningham, she might have been suspended for real. I ain't lying. I believe Sophie Cunningham might have been suspended for real. Because Sophie balled out. I think Sophie had like 11 points. How many points did Sophie have? Sophie had 11 points in 18 minutes. 4 or 5 from the field. 3 or 4 from 3. Yeah, bruh. She looked at a little suspect. That elbow looked at a little, team goes right at Sophie. Sophie actually closed the game out.
The delay of game made no sense. It felt like Tyler wanted to assert himself into the game, and that was ridiculous. So, scores table, and then he gave us a delay of game, which is a team technical foul. So, you can ask Tyler. I don't agree with that.
Stephanie White did nothing. The head coach of the Indiana Fever, the woman whose entire job description includes protecting her franchise player, the person who is supposed to stand up, scream at officials, and demand accountability when her star gets knocked to the floor by a moving freight train. She sat there. She said nothing. Not one word to the referees. Not one gesture of frustration. Not one moment of visible outrage that the most important player on her roster just got leveled by an illegal screen with 0 consequences. Complete and total silence. And this is what makes it sting so much worse. Because this is the same Stephanie White who has been under fire all season long for how she handles Caitlin Clark. This is the same coach who was criticized for pulling Clark out of the game during a lead against the expansion Portland Fire only to watch the team collapse and lose by 16. This is the same coach that Jason Whitlock publicly accused of sabotaging Clark through substitution patterns. He went on record and said there is a divide in that Fever locker room and that people are choosing between Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White. Now, whether you agree with Whitlock or not, those are heavy words. And the fact that Stephanie White's silence in this moment gave those accusations even more oxygen is something the Fever cannot afford to ignore. Sophie Cunningham even addressed the tension on her podcast, saying that Steph and CC are two very competitive people who just want to win, and that sometimes you bump heads. She said it was all out of good intent. But good intent does not explain sitting quietly while your franchise player gets bulldozed.
Indiana likes to play. Mitchell, step back, hits a three! Found Mitchell, who just circles around. Mitchell's got to get it up. Oh!
Good intent does not explain a pattern of moments where Stephanie White has chosen silence over protection. And fans watching in real time did not need a podcast explanation. They saw it with their own eyes. And they were furious, because the woman who is supposed to fight for Caitlin Clark could not even be bothered to raise her voice. And while the coach stayed frozen on the sideline, someone else on that bench was watching every single second of it unfold. 3 minutes and 56 seconds left on the clock, Indiana clinging to a slim lead. Clark had just picked up a technical foul for expressing her frustration with the officials. Connecticut had cut it close. The momentum had completely shifted to the Sun. The building was getting louder, and the Fever looked like they were about to let a very winnable road game collapse right in front of them. That is when Stephanie White made the one move that nobody can argue with last night. She put Sophie Cunningham into the game. The same Sophie Cunningham who was listed on the injury report all week. The same Sophie Cunningham who missed the Chicago game with a supposedly injured right elbow. The same Sophie Cunningham who had to go on her own podcast to defend herself after the Mystics game. The same Sophie Cunningham who winked at the camera earlier in the game like she already knew exactly what was about to happen. And what happened next is something that Indiana Fever fans will be replaying for a very long time. Sophie grabbed a missed shot. Then she pulled up and buried a three-pointer. Then she hit another three-pointer 32 seconds later. Then she drove hard and finished with a layup. Then with 23 seconds left, she drilled one more three-pointer to put the dagger in Connecticut's chest. 11 points on a personal 11-3 run. 4 of 5 from the field. 3 of 4 from beyond the arc. All in the final 4 minutes of a game that was slipping away. The player the Fever tried to quiet. The player who was supposedly too injured to play against Chicago. The player who got put on the injury report for daring to pass the ball to Caitlin Clark. That player walked onto the court and single-handedly rescued the entire game. Indiana Fever 85. Connecticut Sun 75. And the arena knew it. Everyone watching at home knew it. Sophie Cunningham did not just score 11 points. She made a statement that echoed through every front office and every locker room in the WNBA. You cannot silence someone who refuses to be quiet. And what Caitlin Clark said after the game made that message hit even harder. While Sophie was delivering that legendary fourth-quarter performance, Caitlin Clark was putting up a stat line that should end every remaining debate about her place in this league. 25 points, 5 assists, 5 three-pointers on 10 attempts. 10 of 17 from the field, 58.8% shooting, on the road, against a physical Connecticut team that was built to make life miserable for opposing guards, while carrying a back injury that has been lingering for weeks, while her most trusted teammate spent most of the game sitting on the bench, while her own head coach refused to say a word when Brittney Griner sent her crashing to the hardwood. And the three-pointer that might have been the most important shot of the game came right after an offensive foul was finally called on Griner. Clark stepped up and buried it to push Indiana's lead to 72-65 with 5:22 left. That is what elite players do. They take the moment that should break them and they turn it into fuel. Clark did not complain about the no calls. She did not let the physicality slow her down. She answered with the basketball. And when you zoom out and look at what Clark has done over the last stretch of games, the numbers are absolutely staggering. The game winner against the Mystics, 32 points against the Sky, 25 against the Sun. She is shooting over 50% from 3 during this stretch while dragging a team through internal chaos and external controversy. And she is doing it while players like Aaliyah Boston are missing layups that should be automatic, and Kelsey Mitchell is disappearing for entire quarters at a time. Clark is not just the best player on this team. Right now, there is a very strong case that she is carrying this franchise on her back in ways that no one should have to. So let us pull all of this together, because the full picture is even more alarming than any single moment from last night. Indiana is sitting at 8-5. They are in the mix. They are competitive, but underneath the surface, this organization is cracking. The Stephanie White situation is not going away. The injury report questions are not going away. The way Clark gets officiated is not going away. And the Sophie Cunningham drama just added another layer that the front office is going to have to address whether they want to or not. Because here is the reality that nobody in that building wants to admit. The two players most responsible for keeping this season alive are Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham. And both of them have spent the last 2 weeks being put through situations that no player should have to deal with. Clark is absorbing hits with no protection from the officials or her own coach. Sophie is getting buried on the injury report under circumstances that fans overwhelmingly believe were punitive. And yet those two players are the ones delivering when the lights are brightest. Clark with the game winner against Washington, Sophie with the 11-point dagger against Connecticut. The Fever are winning in spite of the dysfunction, not because they have solved it. And that kind of tension does not stay hidden forever. Sophie hinted at it herself when she said on her podcast that younger players on the roster are struggling with the microscope that comes with playing alongside Clark. That is a real issue. And it tells you that behind closed doors, the pressure is mounting in ways that the scoreboard does not always reflect. The question now is simple. How long can talent paper over turmoil before it all comes undone? So here is what really happened in Connecticut last night. Brittney Griner delivered a hit on Caitlin Clark that should have ended with an ejection. The referees watched it happen and did nothing. Stephanie White sat in silence while her franchise player picked herself up off the floor with zero protection from the one person who is paid to provide it. Sophie Cunningham sat on the bench carrying an injury that most fans believe was a punishment. And when the game was slipping away, it was Sophie who walked onto that court and reminded everyone exactly why she belongs here. 11 points, 4 minutes. One statement that the Fever will never be able to erase. Clark and Cunningham are carrying this team. The only question left is whether the people running this franchise will help them or keep getting in their way. What do you think happens next? Drop it below.
Stay locked with my channel, Simply Explained, for further WNBA updates.